You've been in one. I don't care where you grew up in this country, small town, big city, somewhere in between, you have walked into a bowling alley at least once. And I'd bet money you remember it exactly the way I do. That smell. Lane oil, and stale beer, and fryer grease, and whatever industrial spray they blast into the rental shoes, all blended into something no candle company has ever tried to bottle. The carpet with the neon geometric pattern that looked dated in 1994 and somehow looks identical today. And the sound, that's the one that sticks. The low rumble of a ball rolling down 60 feet of wood, then the crack, then the machine grinding behind the pins like it's about to give up. Now here's the part you probably didn't think about at the time. Somebody owned that building. Somebody was paying for that carpet, that fryer, those 32 machines back there. And that somebody was almost certainly not getting rich. I want to tell you about the moment this business first got its hooks in me. I was maybe 12, and my dad bowled in a Thursday night league at a place called Hank's Lanes. 24 lanes, a bar in the back, a snack counter that sold exactly 4 things. Hank himself was always there, always in the same navy windbreaker, and one night I asked him with the total tactlessness of a 12-year-old how much money he made. He laughed. Then he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "Kid, I don't make money on bowling. I make money on beer. The bowling is just how I keep you here long enough to buy it." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He just handed me the entire business model in 24 words, and it took me another 15 years and a finance degree to understand how right he was. So let's do this properly. What does it cost to own a bowling alley in America right now? Where does the money actually come from? And why is one of the most nostalgic businesses in the country also one of the most brutal? The answer involves a demographic collapse, a machine designed in the 1950s, a private equity roll-up, and, as always, real estate. First, the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Bowling as a business has been shrinking for 60 years. At the peak in the mid-1960s, there were roughly 12,000 bowling centers in the United States. Bowling was on network television in prime time, pulling audiences that would embarrass most college football broadcasts today. People called bowling alleys the poor man's country club, and they meant it as a compliment. The Census Bureau counted 3,154 bowling establishments with paid employees in 2023. That's down from 6,148 in 1986. So the industry cut itself in half between the mid-60s and 1986, and then cut itself in half again. 2 straight halvings across 2 generations. But the number that actually matters, the one that explains the economics, is leagues. At the end of the 1970s, there were about 9.8 million league bowlers in this country. In the 2024 to 25 season, USBC membership was 1,075,194. That is an 89% decline. Nearly 9 out of 10 league bowlers just walked out of the building and never came back. Why does that matter more than the rest? Because league bowlers are contracted revenue. A league bowler doesn't decide on Thursday whether they feel like bowling. They signed up in August for a 32-week season, and they pay whether they show or not. A league is the closest thing this industry has to a subscription business, and it lost 89% of its subscribers. Hold that thought. It explains almost everything that follows. So, you want to buy one anyway. What's the damage? 2 paths. Build new or buy an existing center. Building new is where the sticker shock lives. Industry cost estimators put a new commercial bowling center somewhere between $2 and $8 million, and when you break it down per lane, you land around $80,000 a lane all in. That's the building shell, the lanes, the pinsetters, scoring systems, ball returns, seating, and the mechanical room behind everything. The equipment alone runs roughly $30,000 to $60,000 a lane new, or 18 to 25 refurbished. Then there's the building. Here's a constraint nobody thinks about. A regulation lane needs about 88 to 100 feet of depth and 11 to 13 feet of width. That's not a preference, that's physics. So a 24-lane center is a box 300 feet wide and over 100 deep, plus a bar, A kitchen, an arcade, restrooms, parking, 20 to 40,000 square feet, easily. And new construction runs $150 to $300 a foot. So you're at 3 to 6 million in structure before a single pin gets set, which is why almost nobody builds new. They buy used. I've got a friend, I'll call her Denise, who did exactly this about 4 years ago. Corporate finance background, tired of it, wanted something real. She found a 24-lane center in a suburb outside Columbus that had been in the same family since 1971. Owner was 73 and out of successors. Asking price was under $1 million for the business, the equipment, and the building on 3.5 acres. Denise called me before she signed. Am I insane? This is a whole building for less than a 2-bedroom condo in a decent city. I told her what I'll tell you. The price is low because the seller has priced in everything that's about to break. And in a bowling alley, the thing that breaks is always the pinsetter. Let me explain the pinsetter, because it is the strangest capital asset in American small business. A traditional free-fall pinsetter is a machine roughly the size of a compact car sitting behind every single lane. It has hundreds of moving parts. It sweeps the deck, picks up 10 pins by their necks, holds them in a rack, drops them into exactly the right spots, catches the ball, and sends it back dozens of times an hour, for decades. Many of the machines running in America today are AMF and Brunswick units designed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Still running, still original. That's the romantic version. The business version, 24 lanes means 24 separate machines, each needing service, each throwing parts that get harder to source every year, and each requiring one very specific human being to fix it. Denise inherited that human being. His name was Vince. He was 68. He'd worked on those machines since the Ford administration, and he was the only person within a 2-hour drive who understood them. Vince did not have a written job description. Vince had a mug, and Denise told me, dead serious, about 6 months in, I don't own a bowling alley. I own Vince, and Vince lets me use the bowling alley. That's not a joke. It's the single biggest structural problem in this industry. The mechanic pipeline dried up. Nobody is training 25-year-olds to rebuild 1,968 pinsetters. So the specialist retires, and you either pay whatever it costs to get a guy in a truck from 3 states away, or you replace the equipment. Which brings us to string pinsetters. Instead of a mechanical arm juggling free pins, each pin hangs on a nylon cord that retracts and resets it, radically fewer parts. Where freefall might run $1,500 a lane per year in parts and repairs, string systems run closer to $500. And more importantly, you don't need a specialist. Regular staff can clear a tangle. New string units run roughly $8,000 to $20,000 a lane, and they use meaningfully less electricity. Purists hate them. There's a real argument about whether pin action is the same when the pins are on a leash. But USBC has certified string systems for league play. And if you're an operator staring at Vince's retirement party on the calendar, that debate resolves itself fast. Okay, you own the building, the lanes work, the machines run. Now the actual question. Where does the money come from? This is where Hank's 24 words become a spreadsheet. The largest bowling operator in North America is the company formerly called Bolero, now Lucky Strike Entertainment, over 360 locations. Because they're public, we get to see the inside of this business in a way you almost never can with a fragmented, family-owned industry. Their revenue split in fiscal 2024 was roughly 49% bowling, 35% food and beverage, 15% amusement arcades and games, and about 2% media, because they also own the Professional Bowlers Association. Read that again. Half the revenue of the largest bowling company in the world does not come from bowling. And it goes further. On an earnings call, management said their upscale Lucky Strike locations were doing about 50% more food and beverage revenue relative to bowling revenue than the old Bolero and AMF sites. Same sport, same pins, same 60 feet of wood. The difference was the room around it. Better seating, better menu, actually staffing the bar on league nights instead of assuming league bowlers only drink water. They sized that gap at $125 to $150 million. That is the entire strategic thesis of modern bowling in one sentence. The lane is not the product. The lane is a device that holds a group of people in one place for 90 minutes with a table in front of them. My buddy Marcus figured this out from the customer side without meaning to. He booked his daughter's 9th birthday at a center near us. 2 lanes, 2 hours, 10 kids. Lane package was around $300, and he thought that was the number. Then came pizzas and pitchers for the parents who stayed. Arcade cards for the kids, because of course arcade cards, and a round of shoe rentals, because nobody brings their own shoes to a 9-year-old's birthday. He texted me the receipt, $640. The lanes were 47% of that ticket. Everything else was food, games, and rentals, and the margin on a $5 shoe rental beats anything else in the building. Those shoes cost $30, last year's, and rent out thousands of times. So now let's talk about what it costs to keep the lights on, because a bowling alley is an expensive building to simply exist. Labor is number one, and it's an awkward shape. You need a full crew Friday night and almost nobody at 2 o'clock Tuesday. But the doors are open at 2 o'clock Tuesday, so you're paying someone to stand there. Utilities are worse than people expect. You're climate controlling 30,000 square feet of open volume with a ceiling 2 stories up. And humidity control isn't optional here. Lane humidity changes how much oil the surface absorbs, which changes how the ball hooks, which your league bowlers will absolutely notice and complain about. So the HVAC is oversized, and it runs. Maintenance is constant. Resurfacing runs 1,000 to 2,500 a lane every 1 to 2 years, 16 to 40,000 a cycle on a 16-lane house. Lanes get oiled daily. Pins get replaced. House balls get chipped and pulled. Then insurance, property taxes, the liquor license, card processing on 1,000 tiny transactions, and the vendor's cut of the arcade. Let's build a real one. 16 lanes. Mid-sized market, family-owned, building-owned, outright no rent, no mortgage, which is the single most common way a surviving independent center actually survives. Revenue. Kentley Insights data puts average revenue per bowling location at roughly $1.5 million, but that average is dragged up hard by the big entertainment complexes. Small centers average closer to $200,000. Our 16-laner sits in between. Call it $900,000 total. About $440,000 bowling and shoes, $315,000 food and beverage, $145,000 arcade and events. Costs. Labor at 30% of revenue, $270,000. Food and beverage cost of goods, $95,000. Utilities, $70,000. Repairs, maintenance, and parts, $60,000. Insurance and property taxes, $45,000. Marketing, software, processing, and licenses, $55,000. Owner's salary, because you're working 60 hours a week, $80,000. Total costs, $675,000. Operating profit, $225,000. On top of the $80,000 you already paid yourself. That's a 25% margin, and it's a real living. Industry benchmarks put well-run centers at 10 to 25%, so this is a good one, near the top of the band. Now watch what happens when I change exactly one variable. You don't own the building, you lease it. A medium venue lease can run $50,000 to $150,000 a year, and on this footprint, you're at the high end. Take $140,000 off that $225,000, and you're at $85,000. Add a bad winter, a broken chiller, one soft quarter, and you're at zero. That's the whole game. Rent or debt service is the difference between a solid family business and a slow-motion liquidation. And it's exactly why the centers that survived are the ones where Grandpa bought the land in 1968. Which brings me to the part that made me actually respect this industry. My friend Priya models consumer businesses for a living, and a few years back she pulled up Bolero's numbers and said, "You realize this isn't a bowling company, right?" What they saw, and what turned one Manhattan location into a company doing $1.2 billion in fiscal 2025 revenue across 360 plus sites, was a fragmented industry full of aging owners. With no succession plan, sitting on real estate, selling cheap because bowling sounded like a dying business. So they rolled it up. Buy the tired AMF. Gut it. Add lounge seating and a real kitchen and a full bar. Rebrand it upscale, and the same 60 feet of wood produces a much bigger check per visit. But roll-ups are not free. In fiscal 2025, Lucky Strike's revenue grew 4% to $1.2 billion, and same-store revenue fell 3.7%. Meaning, the growth came from buying more locations, not from the existing ones doing better. Adjusted EBITDA was $367.7 million, which sounds enormous, and the company still posted a net loss of $10 million. Where does $367 million of EBITDA go? Interest and depreciation. They were running roughly $49 million of interest expense in a single quarter. That's the leveraged roll-up. It works beautifully when consumer spending is strong and rates are low. When discretionary spending softens and bowling is about as discretionary as it gets, the debt doesn't soften with it. And now the last piece, the one that explains the disappearing 3,000 centers better than nostalgia ever will. A guy I know named Danny bought a 16-lane center in a growing suburb about 9 years ago. He ran it competently, cleared maybe 80 grand a year, which for the hours was not amazing. I asked him once why he stayed. He said, "I'm not in the bowling business. I'm in the land business. The bowling just pays the property taxes while I wait." 4 acres, flat, paved, zoned commercial, on a road that added 2 subdivisions within a mile. He sold to a developer in year 7 for several times what he paid, and the lanes came out 3 weeks later. That's the exit for a huge share of this industry, and it's why the count keeps falling. Bowling needs a big, single-story, cheap-per-foot building near where people live, the exact footprint self-storage wants. Or a grocery store. Or apartments. When the land under the alley is worth more than the business inside it, the business has an expiration date, and the zoning board sets it, not the owner. So, let's be honest about both ends. The good year. You own your building, leagues are full 4 nights a week, you've got a corporate events pipeline, your kitchen doesn't embarrass you, and you clear $250 on $900 in revenue, while your land quietly appreciates underneath you. The bad year. Your regional employer lays off 400 people and 3 leagues evaporate. A rooftop unit dies in July for 30 grand. Vince retires, and the quote to convert 24 lanes to string pinsetters comes back at $300,000. Revenue drops 15%, and your fixed costs drop 0, because that's what fixed means. So can a bowling alley make you money? Yes, it really can, but only if you understand what you actually bought. You did not buy a sport. You bought a large, cheap building on land that will probably be worth more later, and inside it you installed a mechanism that keeps groups of people seated together for 90 minutes with a bar within arm's reach. The pins are theater. The margin is in the pitcher, the shoe rental, the arcade card, and the deed. Hank knew that in 1997, in a Navy windbreaker, and he told me for free. If this was useful, do me a favor, hit subscribe, because we do one of these every week on a business you've walked past 1,000 times and never thought about as a P&L. And tell me in the comments which one you want next. I'm putting laser tag, mini golf, and the neighborhood arcade in a fight, and the comments decide who wins. See you next week.